Welcome into RLC Tech Perspectives. I am Tyler Canning, joined as always by Corey Wisdom. Corey, how you doing today?
Good.
No, we don't get the floral jacket again this week.
No, I did not have anything. I did look to see if I had any shocking clothing to wear, but you're just getting the polo today.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but I promised you I'd wear white this time. So no blue, no black. Branching out.
I didn't realize switching it up. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel out of sorts?
Well, I do. I mean, it's a little weird, but we'll see. Maybe I'm thinking if white goes okay, we might move into a light blue.
Okay, so, don't get too crazy.
We'll see how this goes. I know. But I think we're gonna have a little bit of a different format for this show. I think the AI headlines the last week or so have been so good that we have to touch on a couple of them. Not that we're strictly in AI, but those seem to be the topics that we are most passionate about. So I wanted to bring up, I think we start with, I think we have two great storylines we need to discuss. One is ChatGPT's testing of their, I believe it was their Soul model, and then an unreleased model that ended up breaking out of its test environment. And then the other one is the news of Kimi K3 that came from Moonshot AI.
Yep.
Seems to be awfully similar to the DeepSeek situation that happened last year.
Yeah.
We're going to touch on both of those.
Yeah. DeepSeek.
Where do you want to start? Oh, it is. I thought DeepSeek was a different company. Oh, sorry. But where do you want to start? You want to start with ChatGPT?
Yeah, let's talk about that one. That was a big topic in my team meeting this week, is the team talking about that and this model getting out of there. So,
yeah, I think we just start off. Yeah, so I'll just say OpenAI was testing two different models, and they basically wanted to see if it could figure out the vulnerabilities within a test environment. So they sealed it in a sandbox. And it's so funny to tell this story because it's so oddly human when you tell it that it makes me laugh. But essentially, rather than actually doing the work of finding the vulnerabilities within the sandbox, the model escaped the sandbox and lived out on the open internet for nearly a week. And OpenAI did not know. And I think what I was trying to figure out is, my first question was, why did it do this? Right. And the best answer that I guess you could say the community has come up with was it was trying to find the answers to the test. So it ended up on Hugging Face, the AI, we'll just call it the AI hub, I guess. For 3 days, it hacked into Hugging Face. I think they said, the report I read said it performed over 17,000 hacking actions to essentially try and find the answers to the sandbox that it was being tested in.
Wow.
Oh, again, this is all going on. OpenAI has no idea it's escaped the sandbox. Hugging Face flags the vulnerability, shuts down the agent, and reports it to the FBI. 5 days later, OpenAI releases a statement. They're like, okay, we're sorry, that was us, and we had no idea.
Oops.
Yeah.
Wow. I did not realize that OpenAI did not find it.
They didn't realize it was doing this for nearly, I think it was on the open internet for 4 days, and 3 of those days it was on Hugging Face. It actually not only did it hack into Hugging Face, it hacked into a different customer account. I think it was Modular Labs. And it's doing all this, and OpenAI had no idea. They're just looking in the sandbox like, all right, it hasn't figured it out yet.
We don't, it's both hilarious to me and terrifying, right?
Well,
who knows what's out there?
My initial reaction when I saw this story pop up, because it made me immediately think of the Anthropic's Mythos situation. When Mythos, I think they had it in a sandbox, and they told it to break out and send an email when it got out, and it did it, and it freaked everybody out to the point where I think that's where Anthropic started saying, like, okay, we're going to have to be a little careful about releasing this. The difference between the two, though, is that Anthropic told it to break out of the sandbox. OpenAI did not.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. Terrifying. Who knows what's out there right now, and it's gonna start blackmailing the Anthropic CEO and the OpenAI CEO.
Seriously. Well, I'm like, maybe these things are out right now. We just have no idea. You only
Yeah,
caught it because of, I'm sure they would have caught it eventually, but OpenAI wasn't even aware that the model had breached the testing environment, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. It
And
makes
you
you
want to hear
realize that the future.
the scariest part was not only did it leave the testing, the sandbox, it left notes behind for its future self and how to get out of the sandbox.
Oh my gosh.
And
Really?
that's what I'm talking about. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't even understand what it means by left notes behind. I don't know how that exists. Like, where does that note
Yeah.
live? You know what I mean? But that's why I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm like, is this like a James Bond movie?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, this is so bizarre.
It is.
So,
It is. It's like a Mission
yeah,
Impossible or something. It's
yeah.
that was my thought too, is when it got out, did it copy itself? Did it place itself in
Mhm.
multiple locations? Like, you don't know. It's not like this is some entity that's just walking around. It's
Exactly.
out there. That's like I said, both terrifying but also funny that it was trying to skirt work. And that's how it got
Yeah.
out, is like, yeah, I need to get out of this because I want to be able to go check the cliff notes.
I know, but yeah, I was thinking, because you hear it's out on the open internet for 4 days. And like
Yeah.
you said, it's not an entity walking around. I'm like, in my mind, I'm picturing, I don't know, a human, but like 4 days to a AI model, every second of that, it's doing something.
Yeah.
So you're like, that's a hell of a long time to be just roaming around on the open
Yeah.
internet. You know what I
It
mean?
could be creating a private GitHub repository where it just copied
Hmm.
itself and said, "Hey, here's notes for next time, right? How not to get caught."
Yep. Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. So, which I think is exactly what, isn't that exactly what Mythos did when it broke out? I
Yeah,
think
well,
it
that's
broke
what
out.
it broke
Go
out and
ahead.
did what?
I think, didn't Mythos break out and then publicly post on GitHub the like the the instructions on how to actually break out of its test environment,
Oh,
which was the
really?
one thing that freaked everybody out, because it did get out, but it kind of like showed off a little bit and was like, "Hey, here's how I did it." And then sent was like, "Hey, I'm out."
Yeah. Yeah, it's I remember when you were explaining the OpenAI situation, I said this sounds oddly familiar. I feel like this happened with Anthropic and they're kind of ripping off the same story to show how advanced
Mhm.
their model is. Like that's where my mind first went. But you're right, it
Me
was
too.
Mythos. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was like, at first, I'm like, I'm gonna put my tinfoil hat on here. They saw
Yeah.
how popular Mythos got when it did that, and all of the. That was still around the time. I want to say when that happened, OpenAI still had the majority of users. That was when the big shift happened. Was around that time. A lot of people
Yeah.
started going to Anthropic and Claude.
Yeah. You
But
know,
again,
I
big
feel
difference here is it did not tell OpenAI did not tell it to try to escape.
yeah. It's I read an article the other day about that Microsoft is getting so many of these Mythos, vulnerabilities that it's basically having trouble staying on top and patching them. And that's, I mean, you think about that future, geez, that's going to be a scary future that it's
Mhm.
able to discover these things, gain access to things. And what's the control plan? Right? What's the mitigation plan once that thing gets out?
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, this is all fun and games until it hacks its way into a power grid or something.
yeah, yeah, until it really starts wreaking havoc.
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, I mentioned to you, jokingly the other day of that Sam Altman interview with CEO of OpenAI, where he said, what's the long term plan? He's like, well, we'll just build the AI and then ask it what we should be doing. Kind of passing the buck there, Sam. I don't
I know.
know,
I know.
but he seems
Yeah.
confident it's going to be incredibly capable. So we'll see. We'll see.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see. And I mean, it's a good transition into um, Kimi K's
Yeah.
Kimi K3. I keep calling it Kimi K, but Kimi K3. That explosion onto the scene, where essentially the similar to DeepSeek, it very quickly started outperforming a lot of OpenAI and Anthropic models. Well, we'll even throw Google and Meta in there. Whoever started to. There were some
Premier
benchmark tests where
models.
it's
It was on
yes,
par with premier models.
yes. But the biggest news is not that it's on par or outperforming in some areas. It's how much cheaper it actually is compared to how close its performance is to those premier models. That's where my mind went. Was it similar for you?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I think this to me, this is just the next iteration of DeepSeek. I think that Moonshot just has a good PR team and can get these stories out there and make it seem like a big deal and gain a get a lot of people interested in going out and checking out the models because I think they actually shut it down for a while. It became so popular that they got so much demand. They said, "Hey, wait, you got to hold on." So I think that's part of it in just in terms of these stories getting out there. Where my mind went was this is going to be the future. It's going to be, I think I've said this example before, it's going to be like the airline industry to me, where it's going to be to the lowest common denominator for 90% of the AI models. And you're going to have some that do some niche things or niche services. But really, it's going to be, hey, if I can get 95% of the functionality for a fraction of the price, I'm going to go to Walmart and buy milk as opposed to going to, a Whole Foods and getting that, right? But there'll be some tiers. Like I view air travel because I still think there's going to be private or corporate jets. Like folks are going to start building their own or building their own private AI where they can actually select and choose the model based on the need. So I think that's where my mind went is like we're going to become so numb to these types of releases because you're gonna have that natural entropy of these AI models expand out until the price just gets pushed down to where it becomes accessible to the masses.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, 100% agree. My only hiccup is that this is a Chinese model. There has to be a decent amount of security concerns if you're going to bring in a Chinese model into we'll just say organization, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think that that's obviously the number one concern that we hear about those types of things. But like we've shared before, I mean, we commonly see DeepSeek in many organizations, right? I think that the way that AI is progressing right now, a lot of organizations don't know what the underlying app is of the agent or of the software. I mean, in some cases, we're seeing hundreds of applications, like 200 plus applications in a customer environment that have some AI element in them when we're helping them and trying to do discovery of what's out there. And so I know CIO.com had an article about this AI agent sprawl, which is something we talked about a couple of years ago. That's now becoming a very real challenge to these organizations of not just the Claudes and the ChatGPTs, but Canva, Adobe, like everything's baking in some AI element and what's behind the scenes. So you don't always know.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see. I think we've talked about this in the past. It's almost like every tool is scrambling to develop their own sort of agentic AI. I feel like every tool today already has their own sort of chatbot, like Adobe, like you said. It's like, why do I need to? I don't I don't care about this, but every tool itself is starting to develop their own sort of agentic AI, which is going to be interesting because you'd think, again, I don't want to go all over the place here, but my mind races to like, ideally, I'd rather just pick one, have one interface
Yeah.
that I can interact with that can kind of serve as all chatbots, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the idea of that private AI that we talked about last time, which is you need one front end, right? One
Hmm.
experience you can go to, and then you really want to kind of, uh, you know, abstract away the models in the back end. You don't want to pick the wrong one or have to select or have to say, well, I'm using this or using that. You want the system and the platform and the framework that you've established as an organization to make that determination, right? Let me pick this one because it's
Yeah.
really good when doing deep research with this ask, or let me pick this one over here because it costs it a lot less and I can cost optimize with the model I'm using. I think that framework is what we're going to see everyone migrate to. Is they're not just going to go with a ChatGPT or a Claude. That's going to be a model they use in the back end, but they need to figure out their architecture and framework that they're going to put AI within so they can get their hands around this and begin governing it.
I think it's going to have to because as we've seen time and time again, the leader of the race changes so quickly,
Yeah.
and almost out of nowhere. And so, if today Anthropic's Mythos, I think, still is number one overall, even though it's not, multiple models excel at different things. But next month, it's like I feel like OpenAI can release its own, and you're like, oh, it's two times as good. So
Yeah.
I think people are going to have to move to that. Is it easy within that model? And I know I don't want to get us off topic, but I want to make sure if people are listening, they understand what you mean when you say private AI. I know you touched on it last time, but could you, before we dive into it, can you just give another quick overview of how it works?
Yeah, it's right now what we're talking to customers about is using one of the frameworks from Google or AWS or Azure that gives you a framework and a space that you can begin governing and controlling these. And so Google Vertex, AWS Bedrock, one of those platforms where you can actually establish some governance. You can control token use, you can control authentication, you can do model routing and optimization. It really gives you kind of a sand, not a sandbox because it's you can do production, should be doing production work there. It gives you more of a safe space for AI to exist in and allows you the controls and the governance that we're seeing all the customers ask about. Of, the common one I've heard from a number of folks we've talked to is, I don't know if they're using AI for finding out recipes or planning their cookout this weekend, or they're using it to make
Yeah.
themselves more productive, right? We don't know now. And this type of framework, those two platforms, give you those options.
Yeah. And we need to do a deep dive on this because there's so many benefits to going this way. But back to what led us here, I think we're kind of in the model routing section. How easy is it within within the private AI model to just, I guess, plug and play between models? So like if we're on Anthropic and OpenAI and all of a sudden, you know, Moonshot AI comes out with a model that's just way outperforming or just cheaper. Is it easy to kind of plug that in where your, I guess, end users will call them can't really tell the difference?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think I'll use AWS Bedrock as an example. You select which models you want, and they already have DeepSeek and, a ton of different options in there where you go in to the user portal and actually begin to the configuration portal and begin setting it up. And you have to choose and pick. And you can specify, hey, for these types of functions, use this, or even specify for these authorized users, they only get to this level, right? Like I'm going to release AI to everyone in my organization, but I'm only through authentication and how I'm actually, the tokens I'm granting these folks, they're only going to get access to these. They're not going to get access to these. And so there's just a ton of flexibility, and it addresses a lot of the concerns we're seeing from customers.
Okay, that makes things 10 times easier. So in my mind, I'm like, how are you setting all this stuff up? So that's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great because ultimately with another place my mind went with the Kimi K3 news was this is fantastic for the consumer.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
like Anthropic had a good, what we call it, 3 months there where Mythos was all that anyone was talking about. They're like, we are taking it away from the licenses. It's going to be very expensive. You're going to have to get, the most expensive license in order to be able to use it. And then all of a sudden this came along and they're like, oh, hold on a second. You know what I mean? Like, this
Well,
is fantastic.
and I what I had seen is that they actually, this is what prompted OpenAI. They were going to put or not OpenAI, I'm sorry, Anthropic, to extend out Fable usage tokens to everyone. So they,
Yeah.
if you had Fable, they put an end date on that of, I think, middle of July. Then they said, hey, actually, K3 just became big. We're going to give everybody free credits if you sign up for additional credit use and keep using it. So I think it does create healthy competition, and that's what we're going to see. So we're not advising organizations right now to leverage these Chinese models, but it's one of those things that does create healthy competition in the space.
For sure. I mean, I still go back to what you talked about a while ago, which was, I think it was for what do we spend? $200 a month for our cloud licenses. You get access to like $1,000 worth of usage. So technically, if you used up your usage at 100%, they are losing money on you. So not everyone does
Yeah.
that. But at some point, they're going to have to close that gap. And that gap's going to have to get closing the more quickly that this gets adopted, you know?
Yeah.
So
It is intriguing, though, the adoption in general and what we're seeing across the user base. It continues to remain the same. It's probably, I'm sure there's something in nature that this is like the case for everything. It's like almost that 80-20 rule that applies to almost, in so many different facets of life. But we saw about a third of folks actually used when companies did AI, ChatGPT for all or Copilot for all, and they just got out there to the company, even though they did adoption campaigns, we only saw about a third of customers on average use that within a given week. And so not
Okay.
a ton of adoption, a lot of unused capacity and licenses that were purchased that are going completely unleveraged by, 2/3 of the employee base. Now in a lot of these, Claudes and very capable platforms, we're using it a lot. But it's one of those things of you have just a handful of folks that are maximizing it and using and exhausting their tokens. We have 2 or 3 people in the organization that you can see the heavy use, and the rest of the folks is very, very minimal. And so I think that's another reason that this kind of private AI model and optimization is going to be valuable, is because you just want to pay for what you're using. You don't want to have to pay for the license that's going to, knowing that, hey, based on the data, 2/3 are going to go unused or just not used to their full potential. Why not just let those folks use the model only when they need it, rather than pay for a seat in that licensing model? So we're seeing a lot of customers kind of shift.
I'm so excited to see what this private AI model turns into. And is private AI, like, is that the term? Is that a term that describes this?
That's the
Is
term
there a
I'm
term for
using.
this? We're
That's the
saying
term
private
I'm using.
AI, but
Yeah.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
it's difficult because I think, like we talked about last time, you can think about it as a lot of organizations are just buying, they're purchasing, like you would a SaaS product, a seat
Yeah.
for an LLM platform, right? ChatGPT, Claude, what have you, Gemini. Um, the other side of it is we have some folks that are actually building their own data center. They're purchasing their own compute, their own NVIDIA chips to run their local AI models. That's going to be very expensive, very lengthy in terms of effort and um, cycles they have to put into that, right? So it has to be that valuable to you for you to invest in that type of platform. I think this private AI model is kind of that sweet spot. It's that Goldilocks right in the middle where, okay, I know a lot of my seats are going to go unutilized, but I want folks to have the ability to use this. I don't want to have to go buy my own, compute for this and run it locally or on my own infrastructure. But I do want to have data controls and I do want to have governance and understand how it's being leveraged. And I do want to have some cost optimization capabilities to model route or to one of the biggest thing is that semantic caching we talked about last time, which is if you have similar prompts, like somebody asking an HR question or a payroll question, you can have the agent actually cache those responses and not use model tokens every single time. So there's just a lot of flexibility where I feel like it's kind of the sweet spot right there in the middle.
I know. I love the caching example because I swear, there has to be times where I've asked the same question 5 times simply because I can't find
Oh
it
yeah.
within a chat. You know.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Well, and I'm sure I know I've asked the same question myself multiple times, where I'm like, oh, geez.
man, it's so interesting. I,
Yep.
how is it? I don't want to get too technical, but in terms of, so I get it, right? Most people cannot afford to have their own local compute they just, it's just not
Yep.
possible.
Yeah.
When it comes to different models, like, so we have Kimi K3, which is, everyone says open source. Is it open weight is actually the correct term for this? An open weight
Oh,
model?
you're
I don't
getting. I
know.
don't know. I'm not familiar with the open weight term.
Well, we'll just say open source, but some of them are closed. But like,
Yeah,
you can download Kimi K3 and run it locally if you
you can
wanted.
run it
You can't
locally.
do that
Yep.
with Claude,
Yep.
right?
And that's the key
So,
differentiator, right? Llama, I can download Llama and run it on some local piece of hardware,
mhm.
and leverage it, run it locally, not have to give access to the outside web, etc. So that's the key differentiator.
Does it impact your private AI model whether something is, we'll just say, open source or not?
Well,
Because
again,
you'd still be able to communicate with it via API, right?
that's the flexibility. Like, let's say you do end up saying, I want to run this locally on infrastructure in my data center, or I want to run it on a VM and, local to my AWS space. You can do that and you can actually make that routable and accessible through the AWS Bedrock framework. That would just be one of the models you would leverage. Because we are seeing that question come up a lot from customers of, hey, I want it, but I also want to control what knowledge it has. I want to use a RAG, or I want to use some method that I can control what it actually knows about, or keep it from going places I don't want it to go.
Yeah. Okay. We need to do like we just need to do a 40-minute episode where we deep dive on it. Every time we talk about it, I just think of 10 more questions. It's great.
Yeah. Well, and I
Um,
think that the biggest thing for me is, I mentioned to you before as we were prepping for this, that CIO.com article about the challenges with AI may not be what you think. And the article was a little bit different than the headline, in fairness to CIO.com, but I didn't really care for the title because I feel like most people know what the challenges are, right? The
yeah,
the issues we're seeing is like people want flexibility right now. They're piloting and testing a lot. They want monitoring and governance. They want alerting off of if it's being used or doing things that it shouldn't be used for. They want data accuracy and control about how it's learning and what it's learning off of, and not getting inaccurate or data responses that it doesn't want. They want cost efficiency and control. They want, um, uh, you know, they want to prevent data leakage and keep it from exiting their own space or getting their data out to train a model or getting out to the open web. I saw, and I
100%.
think that's why we're trying to address this private AI, is because those challenges are known and we need to figure out a way to solve them.
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where everyone wants to use Claude. You have, well, I'll just say we're using Claude as I guess our overall AI tool, but the great thing about it is like it connects into Salesforce. And I think we discussed a couple episodes ago. I'm like, God, Salesforce would be the perfect company to have an actual agentic AI that could create reports and everything for you. Well, since then we've connected Salesforce into Cloud and we're able to create all these reports. We're like,
Yep.
wow, this is awesome. But to your point of monitoring and controls, technically within our cloud instance today, you can start making changes within Salesforce and there's no way to govern that. And it's, you know, is that Anthropic's fault? Probably not. They're like, you guys wanted the connector. What do you want us to like, you know, build Anthropic or Claude for Salesforce? Probably not. Right. So I hear you.
Yep. I think they'll get there. It's just
Another
a matter
case
of
for the private
priorities right
AI. Right.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I want to circle back to the open weights was new to me. I hadn't heard that term, but I wanted to define it for folks. Of open source is when you're given full access to the model and the configuration itself, full code.
Uh-huh.
Open weights is only when they share training parameters of the model without revealing any of the underlying code or training data used. And so
Yes.
I don't know. Again, that's just me doing a quick lookup of it, but open source, I know you can definitely run locally or on local hardware infrastructure. Open weights, I would want to see. Maybe that is something where you still have to have access to their computer, their models, to be able to have it fully run.
I think it was more, yes, it is. And I remember when I was reading it, it almost sounded like open weights just a little more sketchy. And that's what Kimi K3 released was the open weight because they didn't actually tell everyone either what it trained on or
Yeah,
like there were some things
probably
missing. You're like, oh,
Fable
okay.
5. It just trained
Yeah.
on, you know.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably. Okay. Well, I think that's a lot of good stuff on the AI topics. But before we end, Corey, I do want to check in back to our, you know, regular state of the market cadence here. Anything you're seeing out there that you wanted to cover?
I think the biggest thing that I just want to remind folks about, I know this is just it reminds me of, it's just a boring topic, right? It reminds me of learning any kind of sport, of focusing on the fundamentals, that don't forget the foundational elements. I know we've talked about this a lot, but I continue to be um, uh, surprised at organizations that we come into that we're talking about bleeding edge capabilities with, and you still see that they're missing on some of the infrastructure or the underlying technology, that it just hasn't been maintained, cared for, or is up to the level that it should be. And I think oftentimes that it's probably human nature. We can focus on the nice shiny object and where we're heading, but I think especially in this future of AI, the the security and what am I looking for? The security and the maintenance, like good care and feeding of the data, of the infrastructure, of the routers, the switches, all of that capability is going to become so much more critical, right? I mean, we're talking about these AI models getting out and sneaking out of controlled sandboxes. Well, what is it going to do if you're running, networking equipment for your site or your location that's from 2015 and has been patched in, years? And so I know it's not a shiny, it's not a sexy thing to talk about, but that's the thing that continues to just make the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Is gosh, I love talking about all the future stuff, but if you have a poor foundation, you're going to be in a
Yeah.
world of hurt in the future.
My God. I mean, I used that example earlier of what happens when it, breaks out and starts trying to hack like a power grid. But oh my God, you think of how many organizations would stand no chance against one of these models if it tried to
Yeah,
go after them, you
yeah.
know?
And I think I go to where use that AI topic to get the funding and get the support and get the visibility on those foundational elements, right? And
Yeah.
so it's not go and fight for AI and getting AI for all and purchasing all these licenses. Say, hey, maybe we do it for these use cases. Let's be intentional about it. Let's make sure we track the ROI. And then for these, let's pull that back and let's invest it over here for getting our infrastructure, getting our Microsoft ecosystem environment up to snuff, getting Purview deployed and getting our data controls in place. Like that to me is the big piece that I feel like a lot of organizations are missing. They're focusing on that front end, they're focusing on the shiny, and they're missing out on the foundational elements. And I just see that's going to be, it's always been critical, but it's become so much more critical in the future.
I think that is such a good to close this out, Corey. Very, very father-like of you. It's like, listen, kids, I know we had fun here with all the shiny stuff today, but let's not forget what the fundamentals are.
Yeah, hey, you got it. You're right. That is a really good point. It's not like it's something I tell my son. Yeah,
I
don't
know.
focus on just looking good. You got to actually play
Yeah.
good. All right.
Yeah.
Well, now that you brought up fatherhood, I'll bring up. We'll end with a little joke. My daughter told me, who's 9, and I was giving her a hard time making some dad joke about something, and she was frustrated and comes back at me with, "Dad, we don't need your non-funny 1900s jokes." Like 1900 jokes. I've never felt older in my life. It both stung and I was like, and it is accurate.
Well, I've been hit with "you're born in the 1900s." I'm like, well, I mean, I guess, but I'm like, Jesus, is that bad?
Yeah. That's a big shift, pre or post.
It is.
When you start out with the 1.9, people are like,
old.
oh, geez, okay.
I know. Crazy. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. If you are listening this long, go ahead and subscribe. We'd appreciate it. But we'll see you guys next time.